Depression is a bullet with no name, and I've been held at gunpoint.
Depression is a bullet with no name, and I've been held at gunpoint. I'm taking a minute to soak that in because, you know, I think we all get those down moments, right? Like really down moments. And sometimes it's hard to talk about them because we either feel silly for talking about it or even thinking of it. And then also it's because we don't think anyone has been in our exact shoes as to why we feel this way. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to Bliss Talk. It's Monday. We do this Mondays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Oh, my guest has already arrived. He goes by Lindoyes, and he's a writer, deaf poet, spoken word artist, and it looks like he's from Philly. And tonight I'm going to ask him a couple of questions. I hope he's ready for it. We like to have times it gets really serious, but I like to laugh in between as well. Come on in. Hey, T, what's up?
Hey, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Oh, snap. I like that.
Yeah.
How do I get that on my head?
You gotta go. Well, it's kind of hard to explain. I can send you a video later, but it's kind of hard for me to explain. I'm not that versed in the language.
No worries. We can. It's after Bliss Talk. We can talk about it because I got to figure it out. That's dope. So how you doing?
I'm in a really good space, you know. In all considerations, I'm in a really good vibe and space right now.
That's so good. Today I woke up kind of late and I was feeling kind of down because I hate being late for anything, right?
Right.
And so Miss Momo Love, which is somebody that I had on Bliss Talk for last season, and she posted this thing where it was like a whole bunch of people racing, and this guy, he fell down. And so, I mean, from the looks of it, it didn't look like he could catch up. But when I tell you he got back up and just like back in it, he ended up winning the race. And I was like, I needed to see that. That's going to be me. I'm going to catch up. I'm going to catch up.
Wait.
Yes.
That's a sweet story. I'm going to keep that in my mind and remind myself in moments where I feel like that.
Keep it. I was like, that was perfect timing for that to show up. But anyways, let's get down to the Bliss Talk. So I like to build, learn, aspire, collaborate, and share keys. I go by the name of Carmen Bliss, and I'm a singer, songwriter, entrepreneur, and I do this Bliss Talk show as well. And you go by Lindoyes, right?
Correct.
It's so nice to meet you. I love that you're a writer, a deaf poet, spoken word artist. And are you from Philly?
Yes.
Yes, Philly in the house. Are you like there now or?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, yes. Sweet. I'm all the way in North Carolina, so this should be like a really dope conversation.
Wait.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, I saw you had this really cool photo. It was animated or a drawing, and it was with T'Challa, and you were like holding him. And so one of your lines in your poem that you wrote about it was talking about how he was, you know, a collaborator. And so I wanted to know from your perspective, what does it mean to be a good collaborator?
A good collaborator is always trying to get a consensus of the community before they move. And even when they move, they're working with and not trying to see how the work is going to get done or leading on the work. So it's a side-by-side type of action that is a consensus of the community that puts your concerns to the back burner and put the community concerns to the front. Absolutely.
I love that. Working hand in hand. And I thought that was great that you pointed that out because I feel like we all have our individual things going on, right? And how can we figure out how to be of help to someone or of service to someone else, you know, instead of, you know, just pushing our brand, helping each other push their brand in some sort of way and creating a machine. So I love that you pointed that out. My next question for you. So you are a poet, and I wanted to know, what is your favorite book that you've ever written? And I want you to explain it for us. Right.
My favorite poem that I ever written probably has to be Trigger Warning and Cupid G. They're two poems, but I often perform them together because there's something where I get to play a couple of different characters in them. They require me to use a lot of the stage to act them out, and it also allows me to play out some characters that are in my head out loud to people and see how much fun I can have. And then touch on the top of that is, heavy hearted at the same time. So there's a message, there's the actress, and then there's fun for me as a performer that I hope, brings the audience into just like to take in the food and the medicine at the same time.
Absolutely. What was your favorite line from that?
Oh, my favorite line is that depression is a bullet with no name, and I've been held at gunpoint.
Depression is a bullet with no name, and I've been held at gunpoint. I'm taking a minute to soak that in because, I think we all get those down moments, right? Like really down moments. And sometimes it's hard to talk about them because we either feel silly for talking about it or even thinking of it. And then also it's because we don't think anyone has been in our exact shoes as to why we feel this way. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I wholeheartedly agree. And I would just add to it, just like not everyone is skilled to know how to listen to it as well. Because there's things that we think we can prescribe for someone that describes a sense of depression, but it's not always the best thing that we should ask of them because like depression doesn't look like one thing. So therefore it's not going to be described something that made you feel better to make someone else feel better. So we always have to be like aware of how we're listening and what we are we saying to make sure that we're doing the best for others and recognize sometimes just like in these moments when people are going through depression, we might not be their resource, but we should lead them to a resource.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. I had a moment with someone very, very close to me and they were going through it. And it broke my heart because I knew that there was nothing I could say to make them feel better. Even though I tried to level and say, I felt this way before. I know what you're going through and this is how I got through it. It didn't help because we were so close, for her to be able to kind of take in what I was saying. And so what I ended up doing was I had to pray that someone came into her life to show her something that I couldn't show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At that point, I kind of had to relinquish whatever control that I wanted to have over her emotions because at that point, I mean, it wasn't for me to show her what she needed to show her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think and my homie Enoch has said this the best, who's another poet from Delaware but resides in Philly. It's just like conversations and folks around you doesn't replace therapy, And, I think it's good to have those that want to be a resource of saying, like, if you have a down moment, I'm here to listen. Or also, I've been through this moment, so these are some things I can prescribe to you that hopefully make you feel better. But also, there is always great to have that lived experience matched up with someone that studies this. This is all they do, and this is all they think about. So they can help you develop language around it so you can best communicate what you need in that moment. Because sometimes, we don't even know how to explain what it is exactly we're feeling because there's so many ways to describe sadness and we only have 2 words for it, but we need about 10 or 20 to really pinpoint it.
I need you to say that again because that is so true. We
don't
know how to communicate it. We don't have the language for it.
Yeah, for me, because I'm someone that prescribes to therapy, and I go to therapy monthly because I go through like seasonal depression, or sometimes my depression is triggered by just like the cycle of Black Death. So sometimes I have to avoid seeing the footage. Like I may read the article, or I may just simply be aware of it and just allow my feelings, but I might not know all the details because it does something to me that is hard for me to climb out of, so I can be present in that moment to bring awareness. So what I have been learning through my therapist and what I'm just learning from other people live experiences is just like developing a language around it, developing the idea of just like knowing how to communicate that with someone else and who can take that in, and how sometimes you need to create boundaries, because sometimes I have learned this the hard way. Talking about my depression with someone can also trigger their depression. And then we're both in this situation. So I have to also be aware of just like there's certain folks I have to go to about this that can be present for me, and some folks can't, but they deal with me in other aspects, you know?
Absolutely. I agree. And it makes me think about, I'm 31 years old, and so I feel like I've lived so many lives, you know?
Yeah.
There's been so many different periods in my life, and they've all been different. I feel like I've changed with every era that I've been in, you know, for the past 3 decades. And then I forget sometimes that there is some trauma that I never dealt with my other past lives. Does that make sense? Like, and so I get frustrated with myself, but then I have to realize that, you know, this is all like a buildup, you know. I've been on the earth for a bit now, and so there's going to be a lot of things now that trigger me because it might remind me of something from my past.
Yeah, and I think that's the first step of just like being aware of like what we think of as normal is not normal. So what we dealt with before, we actually needed some healing from, versus just like to sleep on it or ginger ale or just to keep working. Because sometimes, I mean, a lot of times that's not the best medicine. My friend KP has said this, and I always go back to this when I'm going through anything that doesn't feel normal to me, but people want me to take it on as it's normal. It's just like, you know, after the Civil War, we were all let from capture, but none of us talked to a therapist of what it meant to be captured for so long, for generations, and we still haven't talked about that. So we're birthed with that generational curse of like, we have not talked about what it meant to be captured for so long, and we've seen all our family members go through that PTSD of just like things be triggering them, because just like generations have, you know, we had carried that on for generations, and we start to recognize that within ourselves that we have to unpack it, you know what I'm saying? So we can be better and be more aware of it.
And I think maybe that's why, being millennial, we were always told we're spoiled and this, that, and the third. Like if we came to our parents with an issue that was really bothering us, for example, they would be like, well, in my day, such like, so what you're going through doesn't really matter, or it's, you know, it's dismissed like that. And so then you think you really just have to tough it up and not really get any type of closure or therapy or consoling that you really needed. So I think that's a great point. Great point.
And that's just the nature of time, because before us, there was Generation X, and before them, there was boomers. And I remember my grandma telling me a story of just how her grandma thought she was so spoiled because they had a phone in the house. You know, that's just like a landline, right?
Yeah.
You know, all you want to do is be on that phone all day. You can't wait to come home from school to be on the phone. And I'm like, right. So like every generation prior sees some level of growth and accessibility that they don't have, that they look upon as a privilege, because they can think about if that was during my time, how freeing that was, or how they have a sense of just like mystique around their experiences around what it meant to be without, you know?
Absolutely.
They kind of romanticize it in a way because it brings memories, but it doesn't always, you know, is applicable all the time.
I'm so glad that we're talking about this, because I feel like when this goes up on YouTube, people will watch it and really think about this, because I don't think I've ever had the conversation and talking about like in depth of, you know, the generational curses that and traumas that we are experiencing right now. So that's
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. I was done.
And I was thinking about this like recently, like last week, of just like how generational curses have fused so much. Because like you got to think about hip hop been around for like 30 years, and hip hop has always been something that has talked about anti-policing because of how much violence that has created in our communities. And for those 30 years of hip hop listeners listening to that, they recognize like how much harm it is. And now we're at this point where people are talking about defunding it and abolishing it because of those 30 some years of that conversation already happening for them. So we're seeing so many folks that weren't there prior that are now here because they have been convinced of that 30 some years of hip hop. And that was generational curses, because in that 30 some years of hip hop, there have been about 2 or 3 generations that had the same narrative, same talk. And now we're seeing so many different folks at the protests are rallying behind these causes. And it's because of that generational curses, because like police brutality didn't start with us. I mean, the first story I remember was I was in middle school in my African American study class. They were talking about Martin Luther King, and when they were talking about Martin Luther King, they was talking about one of his last things that he did, and he was trying to organize a protest around 2 sanitation workers that got killed on a line of duty and stuff like that, and how the police were trying to conceal it. So even in that moment, he was fighting police brutality in the same way we're talking about it now. And like even when you see the videos of like Martin Luther King like protests, you see the cops beating them up. You see these things. So like police brutality is just like something that we inherited, and it's just like one of those generational curses that is now like have convinced people that like, yo, we need to really rethink public safety, because we shouldn't have these generational curses. We should not be triggered when someone's trying to offer us safety, and it becomes another form of harm.
I totally agree with that. Definitely. Let's see. The next discussion I wanted to have with you. Mm-hmm. You wrote a poem, and I believe it's called In Mourning. And you were talking about living with loss. And that kind of triggered something, because I was just thinking this past week how those moments in time that we have with our loved ones or our family, we don't realize sometimes it's once in a lifetime. Like, I'll give you the example. Like, I saw a show and they were making s'mores, and I was like, when's the last time I had a s'more? The crackers with the chocolate and the marshmallows. I was like, oh, we made it one time over the stove, like when I was younger. And at that moment, you're thinking that I can do this again if I wanted to with my family, no problem. But we never did it again. You know what I mean? And some of these moments, no matter how small or big, some of them are once in a lifetime events. So it got me to thinking about that. So what's your perspective on that?
I have a very nuanced perspective on like mourning and dealing with loss. I think I need to say this with a disclaimer. Anything I'm saying does not replace therapy, does not replace you looking at experts, studying experts, and reading for your own, and recognize that there's not one shoe that fits all, because there's different prescriptions, a way of healing and dealing with grieving. But I think for me, I try not to fall into the paranoia of just like last moments. And I try to just be aware of just like my personhood and conversations that I feel as though we're going to have. So like, for example, I remember Jada Pinkett was sharing a story about Tupac, and one of her stories that she was sharing about Tupac was the last conversation they had. And the last conversation they had was an argument. And she can't remember exactly what they was arguing, but that was the last conversation they had before Tupac passed. And she does not regret having that conversation with them, given, that was the last conversation she has, because she knew so much about their relationship that eventually they would resolve it, they would have another conversation, they would move forward. And so, like, in moments of grieving, I often, like, look back at my last moment and not try to harbor over that's like, I wish I did more, but more so just like, where were our relationships, and what type of like grieving policies did we have around like when we didn't have the best moments together and we were arguing, we had some type of contention, and what could I do better in that moment to have better relationships with folks, so I can be able to know that we gave each other the best impression of each other, no matter what moment it was, matter small or big, and move forward on that foot. And then also recognize that the grieving process is continuous. It does not have an end date. It's not like a year I'm doing good. It's not like 5 years I'm doing good. Like my granny died 10 years ago, and there's still moments that make me cry over little things. Like I don't eat McDonald's. I have no intention to eat McDonald's, but I go past the McDonald's once in a while. And if the McDonald's is near like a movie theater, I think about those trips I had with my granny. Because we would go to the movie theater and we go to the McDonald's, and it hits me, right? And that's just the way time is, you know. That's just the way like our grieving policy has, and we just have to allow our body and our mind to heal that way. Because tears are very healing and like therapeutic and things we need. And I think once we allow those things to happen, we allow ourselves to talk about it, and we allow ourselves to not get over it, but realize that it is. Because I think sometimes when people think of like there's an over to this, they put an end date to their grieving when it just doesn't exist. It's just a continuous process.
I agree. I had a conversation with a young lady, and we were talking about how it's something that, I mean, it's a part of life, and also it's not something that you can just like get over. You know, it's something that might last forever. You know what I mean? And then those, and what kind of triggered me when you talked about that in your poem, when I'm talking about, you know, those moments that you don't even realize that it was a once in a lifetime thing. It's just, for me, it's about appreciation. I know that did you see the Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle last night?
I was watching the highlights earlier today, but I didn't get all the way through them. But yeah, continue.
Let me tell you something. I was over there, okay, having a spiritual moment with Miss Patty and Gladys Knight yesterday. And I mean, when we talk about appreciation, I just appreciate it. I'm so glad that I was there to appreciate it. You know what I mean? And there is a line in one of their songs that they have together, Missing You. And it's like, with every tear that I smile, or something like that. Yeah. And it's like, even though it hurts, like you can still smile. Like it's still something that you appreciate about that moment. About that moment that you share with that person that, you know, might not be in your life now, but the crazy thing is you can still smile about it and be like, huh, you know, happen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I'm
trying to think of the poem that you're talking about, because I don't have a poem by that name, but I do have
your Instagram, and it says "In Mourning."
That's all it says? It doesn't say more?
It says "In Mourning" at the top. Like it has like a dash. That's why I thought that was the title of it. But
it probably says more. It's probably not the title, but just the first line, and I was being clever with some things.
Excuse me.
No, you're fine. Woo. But I'm definitely going to look back because I want to know what you're talking about.
Yes, but that was a really dope poem. And I love that your poetry has triggered a couple of these thoughts. That's what poetry is supposed to do. That's how you know you're doing it right. So good job.
Thank you. I don't know if I can take too much credit because I want to look at the poem first.
Okay. No problem.
Cool.
So let's talk about, you had a post that said, I didn't feel safe after I said I love you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that poem. I know that one. That doesn't have a name either, but I distinctly remember those first couple.
You know what? I've noticed that. I'm looking at your poetry or the bars.
Oh, yeah. So, like, my poems that I post on Instagram, they're, like, small, and they're just, like, something I do in a spirit of the moment to be, like, a really crafty project. So I never really give them a title or name because they just exist in this space, and I just let them be. But you're fine. That's more on me.
That's what I was thinking in my head. I was like, I don't think these poems have a name, but
no, they don't. They don't.
My own names.
No. Yeah. I'm sorry. What is your question? When you said that poem, it triggered a memory for me. I was about to go off on that memory, but what is your question?
it wasn't really a question. I kind of just wanted to hash out the topic. You said you didn't feel safe after you said, I love you.
Yeah. So, and when I was coming up with that, I was thinking about how like I love you is not a sense that when you say that, it allows you to be naked, it allows you to be vulnerable. So that's not always a safe space for someone, and that's why some people like to hold on to it and tuck it in, because it allows for so many other emotions, or they don't know how they're going to receive, or it's just going to be mutual. And I started thinking about that. It's just like, you can't use I love you as a safe word. You know what I'm saying? Like, when we think of a safe word, and in this poem, it hints at this, because Kevin Hart in his stand-up has like banana. He says like, our safe word is banana, right? So that means stop everything. I don't feel safe. Let's get back to the safe space. But I love you doesn't work that. Yeah. Oh, pineapple. I'm sorry. Pineapple. Thank you for correcting me. I needed to be accountable at a moment. So pineapple, and let's get back to what makes me safe and stuff like that. And I was thinking about that, of just like, I had a moment with someone where I said I love you, and we're dating romantically, and it didn't make me feel safe. It didn't make me feel safe because like, it's not something they did, but I just realized what everything else meant after this, and how vulnerable I am in this moment, and how naked I felt, that I did actually want a safe word, but this is the first word that came out my mouth, but this is not the safe word.
Oh my gosh. When I saw that, again, I was triggered, because I was like, oh my gosh, somebody did say that to me, and I could not say it back. I was like, he's messing with me. Why is he saying this right now?
Yeah.
And I totally didn't say it back. Like, I couldn't see myself like saying it, because it didn't seem real. And then, like you said, all of the other emotions that play with that, you just can't play around with those words. Just say them around like that. And so, I feel like that's a boundary. Love is a boundary that we are so conscious of. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it's something, that is so sacred and so delicate. I think, for me, in my growing of just like understanding romance and experiencing it, I didn't realize how fragile my heart is until it was broken. So every time I think about, just in the content of like me romanticizing and like having a romance with someone, every time I say it, it is me giving them a glass heart and asking them to hold it. And since it has been broken before, it is them holding on to shards, and I'm hoping that they don't prick their fingers. They can help me put it back to where it's whole again. So it is like something that is very fragile, that it's just like, once I say it, I don't know if this has broke us into a new space that we're in, or does it leave me broken in that moment?
Yeah. And then, it's always got to feel organic, when you say it. And I literally, when I do tell someone I love them, it's like, oh, I love you, like that. So it just comes out organically like that.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, wait a minute, did you just say you love me? I was like, I think I did. Yeah, I did. Because I really did feel it in that moment. And it wasn't just something like a romance type of thing, or it could have been, but it was just more, love is so intangible. You know what I mean?
And it's a spectrum of it. Like there's a spectrum of sadness, there's a spectrum of love, there's a spectrum to all these feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had such a great, lovely 30-minute inspiring conversation. It was fun. We got deep with it.
Yeah, we did.
I want to say thank you to everyone that showed up and stayed tuned in to Bliss Talk tonight. I am Raquel Dior. Hey, how are you?
What's up, Raquel?
Very nice.
Thanks so dope. I appreciate them.
I want you, before we get out of here tonight, I want you to leave us with some keys and concepts that you've kind of picked up on the way.
Keys and concepts. Can you break that down a little bit for me so I'm heading in the right direction?
Absolutely.
So what would be a key and what would be a concept?
My example of a key would be like, what's one of my keys? I'm trying to think of a good one right now. You put me on the spot.
Well, you put me on the spot. Here you are. Here it is.
So I use grapple and grit as one of my keys and concepts. Like, because I've learned through my journey that when I, ask questions or I don't give up on a situation, or I don't let something slide, I actually get better results instead of, like say in your professional realm, if you need to, if you have questions for someone, but someone that's in a high position might not want to acknowledge what you're saying. Like, sir, ma'am, I need you to look into this, and use your grit to just keep going and reach your goal as well. So that's one of my keys and concepts. What about you?
Hey, it's so many I can think of in this moment, and I'm trying to just like think of one that I would like to say now. So one of my keys is to always. All right, let me do with a concept first.
Sure.
Concept. I'm gonna do a concept because those are a lot easier for me because that's just the way I think. So here's go two concepts: practice, repetition, and experience. I think those are all things that people need to be prepared and ready for everything. It's practice, repetition, and experience. Mm-hmm. And then my other concept, since I'm such a blur and a nerd down to my soul, is to recognize that everybody that feels like a side character to you is a main character in their life. Mm-hmm. And you need to recognize the games that we play with each other, even when we feel as though like someone is just a side character. Because mm-hmm. we do really have a major impact in our community, even with people that we pass by. And I often have to remind myself that my community is a lot bigger than those that I'm around. And to keep that in mind, Some keys are hard. Keys are hard for me. I think my biggest key right now is my skincare treatment. And just drink water, eat healthier to have healthier skin, and really recognize that, there's so many products out there, but the best product for you is probably going to be something that, that.
Yeah. You kind of froze there. Are you with me?
Yeah. Okay. The best product for you is going to be something that you learn about before you buy, Mm-hmm. Because I've been doing this whole quarantine, I've been really working on my skin treatment. My new facial wash, my new exfoliator, my new clay mask. I really study these joints to figure out what they're going to be the best for me.
Wow. I would have never known that. I would have known. Your skin looks great, but I'm thinking you're a man, but you know how girls they are about their skin, but that's
no, it's real. I think
skin too.
Yeah, I think grooming is a big part of just us men folk, I guess, but we just don't talk about it enough with each other. But that's something that we can learn from more women identified folks, because since y'all talk about skincare so much, I'll give you the best tips, the best skills on stuff. I went through 20 products that I probably would have got to the products I needed if I had better enriching conversations with other guy folks,
Absolutely. I agree with that. I love it. This is why we have Bliss Talk. So we can talk about these things with one another. That's literally why I have this show, so we can learn from each other's experiences. You know what I mean? And what was I about to say? I can't remember what I was about to say, but I do know we're closing up the show right now. So this has been such a dope conversation. We had a lot of fun. If anybody that stuck around through the whole thing wants to ask us a question, that would be dope. Have one more question to ask. Otherwise, while they're typing it in, will you let us know where we can support you?
Instagram right here, Lindoyes, lindoyes.com-shop to get your merchandise. You heard me right. I don't know why I said it like that. I said it like it was a jingle or something. Like, all right, I need to stop. I don't know why I said that. That was weird. I just felt like a TV show host. I wanted to do a crushed smile at the end. With the little sparkle effect. I don't know why I did it like that. But yeah, Instagram is probably the most active social media I use. I take selfies and I post poems. And like to support me in a real financial way, lindoyes.com-shop, and you'll see all my merchandise from my hoodies, my t-shirts, my books, my buttons, all that great stuff.
I saw that. It was really, really nice. I love it. You have poet. Will you have one that says like singer or like artist? No.
No, because like I like to sell stuff I'm gonna wear that represents me, and I'm only a poet. I'm sorry, I'm not a singer. I'm not a rapper.
I understand. I get it. Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you a lot.
Yes, absolutely. If you guys want to follow me, you can follow me at @Bliss_pics. This video will be on YouTube pretty shortly. We do have a YouTube channel, Bliss Talk Show. You guys go ahead and subscribe to that because it's free to subscribe. And people like Lindoyes be dropping gems like throughout the entire interview. So go ahead and check that out. And you can also go to my website, blisstalkshow.life. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Bye.